The first snow of December had come early to the small Colorado town of Maple Ridge. Jackson Rivers sat behind the wheel of his old Ford pickup truck, listening to the muffled sound of the windshield wipers as he drove along the icy road. He was following his usual route home from the lumberyard. But there was something different in the air that day. The silence was so deep it felt as though the world had held its breath. As he rounded the bend near the broken railway bridge, he saw it. An abandoned truck container, its doors ajar, swaying slightly in the wind. He could have driven past, but a faint movement inside the container caught his attention. Jackson slammed on the brakes, and the truck skidded on the icy gravel. Without thinking, he opened the door and ran toward the darkness. Each breath cut his face, but he didn't care. As he approached the container, he heard faint murmurs coming from inside. Lullabies, trembling voices mixed with fear. When he opened the door all the way, his breath caught in his throat. Inside, two young girls were wrapped in a moldy blanket. The twins were no older than 10. Their cheeks were bright red from the cold, and their lips were trembling. One of them looked at him, her eyes wide but unafraid. The other held a wet, torn piece of paper in her hand. "Please," she whispered, "don't tell anyone we're here." Jackson didn't ask any questions. He simply took off his coat and wrapped both of them in it. "We need to get you warm. Come on." The girls hesitated. "Are you going to call someone?" one asked. "Maybe," Jackson said honestly, lifting the lighter one into his arms. "But right now, I need to save your lives." In the cabin, the fireplace was blazing, warming the air. While Jackson found dry clothes, the girls huddled close together under the blanket. He placed hot cocoa on the table. "What are your names?" he asked gently. "I'm Harmony," said the brave one. "This is Melody. We're twins, 9.5 years old." Jackson smiled slightly. "That's a pretty clear number." Harmony nodded. "Our mother said numbers are important." "Where is she now?" Harmony looked down. "She left. Aunt Sarah was supposed to watch us, but she said if we cried again, she'd leave us in the forest." Jackson's heart ached. The past always came back with a vengeance. He had heard too many stories like this. He stood up and knocked gently on a door in the hallway. "Madison," he called. "Are you okay?" There was no answer. That was rare. Madison hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Not since the day she fainted on stage in the middle school auditorium. The mocking voices, the whispers, the stage lights, they had broken something inside her. She had been diagnosed with selective mutism. She lived like a ghost in her own home, communicating only through glances and gestures. Jackson had perhaps naively thought that bringing these girls home might awaken something in Madison. He wasn't expecting a miracle, but he was hoping for a moment of connection, a glimmer of hope. When he returned to the hall, Melody was sipping her cocoa and humming softly. The melody was almost aimless, but strangely comforting. Harmony closed her eyes and joined her, two soft, imperfect voices intertwining, like old harmony lines reunited after years apart. The door creaked in the hallway. Madison appeared, barefoot, wearing a large flannel shirt, her eyes locked on the twins. She didn't speak, but she stood there and listened. Jackson froze, watching his daughter with silent admiration. He hadn't looked at a stranger in months. Now he stood there, his eyes slightly moist, filled with something like memory or longing. Harmony smiled at him. "Hello, you can sit with us if you'd like." Madison didn't move, but she didn't leave either. She leaned against the doorframe and tilted her head slightly, as if remembering a song she didn't dare sing. That night, after the girls had fallen asleep on the open couch, Jackson sat alone in the kitchen, with an untouched cup of coffee. The air smelled of old pine and cinnamon toast. He looked at the wooden box on the shelf across from him, the kind once used by songwriters, a small recording box with a built-in microphone. Inside were the last recordings his wife had made with Madison. Lullabies, giggles, whispered harmonies. They hadn't been played in 2 years, just like the piano in the corner, just like the man who believed that music could save people. But there was something about harmony and melody. It reminded him of the old days, the simplicity of the melody, the power in the raw, unpolished sounds. Jackson reached for the box and opened it for the first time in years. The next morning he came quietly, only the dull gray light filtering through the frosted windows, and the crackling sound of the tree in the cold woke him. Jackson was the first to wake up, reaching for the coffee machine automatically, as if muscle memory was stronger than sleep. He didn't talk much, not even to himself. Silence had been a part of the walls for a long time, but today there were 3 more breaths in that silence. The twins were still asleep on the recliner, their arms tangled like a single-stemmed vine. Jackson watched them for a long time, then lit the stove. The flames crackled, the air warmed, and something soft and foreign stirred inside him, like a note played on a guitar that hadn't been tuned in years, but still sang the right song. He didn't want to name it, he just let it be. When Madison returned with coffee, he was already sitting at the kitchen table. She had come in silently, as she always did. Her back was straight, her hands folded, watching the steam rise from her cup. She didn't touch him. Her long black hair hung around her face, a curtain that hid her expression, which she could no longer convey with words. Jackson sat across from her and waited. This was their dance, she offering gifts of silence, he occasionally returning the favor. "Does having them stay make you uncomfortable?" he asked quietly. Madison didn't answer, but her fingers curled slightly around the rim of her cup. It meant yes. She nodded. "Okay, I guess they need this, and maybe we do too." He looked at her, just for a second, long enough to see her eyes, the same eyes she had when her mother sang to her on the back porch, long before the silence had settled. That morning, Harmony and Melody woke up awake and smiling. Without being asked, she helped set the table, clinking the spoons, and giggled at the old toaster that liked to burn one side. Madison watched from the hallway, half hidden by the frame, still a shadow in her own home. Melody noticed her and waved. "We saved the only red plate without chips for you." Madison hesitated, then slowly stepped forward. She took the plate with both hands and sat down at the table. Jackson held his breath. 3 girls, a table, no words spoken, but something much better. Laughter, breath, belonging. The snow continued to fall outside. School was canceled, the streets were quiet, but the house was anything but quiet. Jackson pulled out old games from the closet in the hallway and let the girls argue over rules no one remembered. Madison didn't speak, but when Harmony accidentally knocked over the entire Monopoly bank, it was Madison who knelt down to help her rebuild it. The smile that passed between them was bright enough to light the fireplace twice. After dinner, the twins began humming again, low and comfortable, the kind of song children sing when they feel safe. Madison stood nearby, her posture shifting, her shoulders relaxing, her head tilting slightly toward the light like a flower. Then it happened. A single note escaped her lips. Soft, barely audible but unmistakable. Jackson froze in the middle of the kitchen. He turned but said nothing. Harmony noticed. His eyes widened. "You're singing," he said gently. Madison blinked and ran away. Jackson found her in the garage, curled up in the back seat of the old station wagon they never used. The cold didn't seem to bother her. His breath came out in small clouds, his arms wrapped around his knees. He didn't open the door right away, just stood there, his hand on the icy handle. "I heard you," he finally said, "and it was beautiful." Silence. "You don't have to be afraid of your own voice. Not here, Madison." A pause, then he whispered, a little louder, "I wasn't afraid, I just forgot I could do it." They sat together in the cold for a long time. No lessons, no pressure, just shared silence, the kind that tells the truth without needing translation. Jackson remembered thinking his mother believed she had a magical song that would save him, but now he knew better. It wasn't music that saved people, it was being heard. That night, after the twins had gone to bed, Jackson brought down the old guitar case from the attic. When he opened it, dust rose, revealing the weathered, honey-colored body of the tailor. He hadn't touched it in over a decade. Madison was standing in the doorway, her eyes wide. She said nothing but stepped forward. "Do you remember this?" she asked softly. He nodded. He sat down and tuned the strings slowly, with respect. The wood creaked under his fingers, but when he played, the sound was warm and full and alive. "Maybe we can try something again," he said. "Not for a performance, not for anyone else, just for us." Madison moved closer. She whispered, trusting the strings more than her own voice. "Okay." As the fire died down to embers, Jackson began to play an old lullaby that Madison's mother had hummed on long, lonely nights. Madison listened, then began to hum a harmony as quiet as snow. From the hallway, Harmony and Melody crept back in. 4 voices, 1 guitar. No one had planned it, no one had practiced, but in that moment the silence didn't break. It was transformed. There was something sacred about the silence that followed the music. Not the strange silence of unsaid things, but a warm golden silence, as if the house itself were holding its breath, amazed at the return of a sound it had thought lost forever. The days that followed were slow and sweet, like snow melting under the weak winter sun. The roads were still too slippery for school buses, so the girls stayed home. Mornings were filled with oatmeal and card games, afternoons with snowmen and sledding down the hill behind the wooden cabin. But evenings were when the magic returned. Every night, as the light faded and the fire crackled, the girls gathered around the piano or guitar. They didn't call it practice. They didn't say anything, they just sang. Sometimes old hymns, sometimes just made-up songs with silly words and harmonies only they could understand. And Madison, God's gift, Madison sang. She didn't talk much during the day, still avoiding eye contact with strangers, but when the music started, she bloomed like spring, pushing through frozen earth. Jackson kept the recorder running every time, secretly placing it by the fireplace. It wasn't for fame or memories. It was for protection, like a firefly in a jar, to prove to herself that the light was real. One Thursday evening, as Jackson tuned his guitar, Harmony looked up from her sketchbook and asked, "Can we sing at the talent show?" Lyra looked at her in surprise. "At school? On stage?" "Yes," Harmony said, as if it were obvious. "We have 3 songs now. The one Madison started last night, it's beautiful." Madison's fingers tightened around the cocoa cup, her lips forming a thin line. Jackson slowly set his guitar down. "I'm not sure this is a good idea." "Why not?" Harmony asked. "We're not scared." "It's beautiful because school talent shows can be tough," she said carefully. "People laugh when they don't understand something beautiful, and that kind of laughter cuts deeper than silence." Madison shook her head. She knew that laugh all too well, but Harmony didn't back down. "Then maybe it's time someone gave them something they need to understand." The next morning, Jackson walked to the mailbox and found a flyer pinned to the bulletin board next to it. "Winter Talent Showcase, 1 night only, open to all students and families. Registration deadline Friday." He stood in the wind, the paper fluttering gently like a challenge. His hand lingered on it for a moment before he tore off one of the registration tabs. At home, the girls had set up a makeshift stage in the living room, pillows as footlights, a fireplace poker as a microphone stand. Madison sat at the keyboard, her fingers tentatively finding the chords, while Harmony and Lyra practiced harmonies. There were genuine, belly-aching laughs. Jackson watched from the doorway and said nothing. That evening, he pulled out an old music magazine, a worn leather-bound notebook he hadn't opened since before his wife was born. The pages were filled with half-songs, lyrics scribbled in the dark, melodies written for a voice he hadn't heard in a decade. He came across a page that read, "Voices that don't need to rise, just reach." He tapped it with his pen, then added, "They reached me tonight." Friday came. The girls gave their names, and there was no turning back. That night, during rehearsal, something went wrong. In the middle of the song, the piano emitted a metallic clang, like a bell struck out of tune. Madison hit the key again, and the note wobbled. Harmony tried to adjust the harmony vocal line, but the pitch was off. Lyra faltered. Jackson knelt beside the piano and opened the lid. "Broken hammer," he said. "Probably from last year's cold. I'll see if I can fix it." Madison looked panicked. "But we don't have time." Jackson stood up and walked to the back room. When he returned, Taylor was holding his guitar. The girls fell silent. "You know," he said slowly, "the harmonies will sound even better with this. Something warmer, something simple like this." He plucked a string once, low and smooth. The sound filled the room like candlelight. "Are we changing the arrangement?" Lyra asked. Jackson smiled. "We're not changing it, we're evolving." They spent the rest of the evening rearranging everything. No sheet music, no formal structure, just ears, hearts, and instinct. Harmony and Lyra caught the shift instantly, responding like twin wings caught in a new wind. Madison, sitting on the bench next to her father, began to softly hum her part, gradually building with confidence. By midnight, they had something new. Not polished, not perfect, but alive. As they embraced, Harmony looked up and asked, "Do you think they'll hear us?" Jackson paused, then replied, "If they're ready, they'll listen." The auditorium was older than most of the buildings in town. Creaking wooden floors, faded rust-colored velvet curtains, and ceiling tiles that hummed with memories of school dances, graduation speeches, and forgotten recitals. To some, It was just a lit-up sports hall. But to Harmony, Lyra, and Madison, it looked like a mountain. Jackson sat in the front row, the girls standing behind the curtain, peering through a tear in the fabric with nervous eyes. The performance list was taped to the wall nearby, written in hurried pencil and marked with additions. Their group was the last to be added. 14. The unnamed trio. "No one knows who we are," Harmony said more to herself than to anyone else. "That's good," Lyra replied, shifting her feet. "Let them laugh at us before we sing. It'll hit harder." Madison said nothing, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, her eyes on her shoes, but she was there, standing, waiting. It was a miracle in itself. The hours leading up to the performance had not been kind. The teacher began with a casual remark, "I hope the girls don't freeze up." Things like that leave an impression on the audience. Then they came down the hallway stairs, some curious, some amused, some openly mocking. Someone had even written Twins Cup on one of the practice room doors with a marker. Jackson had seen it. He took a breath, wiped it away, and returned to rehearsal as if nothing had happened. But inside, the old anger stirred, the same anger he had buried with every unsent letter he had written to the parents who had whispered about his daughter, the same anger that had silenced his guitar for years. That night, as the girls rehearsed one last time in the hall, Jackson's finger slipped on a chord. A strange note rang out. He cursed under his breath, adjusted the tuning peg. The girls paused. "Are you okay?" Harmony asked. "I'm fine," Jackson lied. Madison looked at him, then gently touched his arm. He turned, surprised. "I can start," she whispered. "The first note." He nodded. This was the moment he realized he wasn't just getting better, he was leading the way. From backstage, they heard the MC's voice. "Next up, a special performance by 3 brave young women. Please welcome our surprise trio." Applause, a slight movement, time slowed down. Jackson stepped onto the stage first, his guitar hanging low across his chest, wearing a worn flannel shirt and jeans he hadn't bought for the occasion. He didn't need polish, he needed presence. Then Harmony and Lyra came out, holding hands, heads held high, and finally Madison, light, quiet, but standing straight like a sapling refusing to bend in the wind. They moved to the center. Jackson sat down, played a soft, open chord. Then Madison closed her eyes and sang. It wasn't loud, it wasn't technically perfect, but it was real. There was a tremor in her voice, like a violin finding its breath. Then it grew steadier, warmer. Harmony joined in on the second line, their voices brushing against each other like feathers. Lyra entered last, sliding between them with such delicate harmony that it felt like memory. Jackson watched as Maisie's voices wove in and out, never competing, only lifting. The guitar, in the key of a piano, was like the wind through pine trees, raw, soothing, steady. The bridge allowed the tension to breathe, like light, open clouds. The audience, previously restless, was now still. Some leaned forward, some sat with hands pressed to their lips, some cried. The final chorus grew, not in volume, but in elegance. Madison's voice rose upward. Harmony held the center. Lyra whispered softly below. 3 voices, 1 voice, unpolished but perfect. The final note faded away like silence after snowfall. Then silence. And for a long suspended moment, that was all there was. A woman in the second row was the first to stand, then a child in the back, then a teacher, then the entire auditorium rose. The applause was not wild. It was respectful. Harmony squeezed Lyra's hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Madison looked out, blinked quickly, and truly, deeply smiled. Jackson looked at them. Not the fragile girl who had once hidden behind silence, but the artist who had just shared her story with a room full of strangers. "They felt us," she said. "This is more than hearing. This is remembering." Madison nodded, then unexpectedly embraced her, tightly and without trembling. It was the first time in years she had felt this way. In that moment, Jackson Whitlock knew that music hadn't just healed his daughter, it had healed him too. The weeks that followed brought surprising developments. A small photo appeared in the local newspaper, the three girls on stage, under the headline, "Three Voices, One Moment, Talent Show Brings Unexpected Tears." It was a small article between the church bake sale and the pothole repair notice, but it meant everything. Jackson cut it out and pinned it above the kitchen sink, not for pride, but for proof that something pure had happened, and that for once the world had looked the other way. The following week brought more attention than expected. Catherine Wells, the school music teacher and someone Jackson had known long ago in another life, dropped by the cabin under the pretext of delivering a thank you card. Her cheeks were red from the wind, but her eyes were warm. "I have something to ask you," she said, handing Jackson a folded flyer. "Would the girls consider performing at the regional showcase in Lincoln next month? With a jury, a real stage, a real audience, and real observers from the community arts centers." Jackson hesitated. He looked around the room, where Harmony and Lyra were lying on the carpet doing homework, and Madison was quietly sketching in the margins of her music notebook. "Do you want them to know you're asking?" Catherine smiled. "I thought I'd talk to you first." He nodded. "I'll ask them." But deep down, his nerves began to stir. The last performance had been a miracle, yes, but it had also been fragile. And this was bigger, riskier, more public. He had seen what public attention did to young talent. It either lifted them up or drained them dry. And Jackson had already lost too much to lose any more. That evening after dinner, Jackson gathered the girls around the kitchen table and unfolded the flyer. Madison traced the bold lettering at the top with her finger, "Voices of Tomorrow's State Youth Arts Showcase." Harmony leaned in. "So we're going to compete?" "Not exactly," Jackson said. "More like a showcase, a chance to be seen by people who might be able to help." Lyra asked, "By people who might judge us?" Everyone turned to Madison. She wasn't scared, just cautious. The traces of silence never really faded, just changed shape. "You don't have to," Jackson said gently. "What you did last week was already more than anyone could ask for." Madison didn't respond right away. Then she whispered almost reluctantly, "What if there's a girl like me there, and she's waiting for someone else to sing first?" Harmony reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then, I want to give her a song worth hearing." The girls worked harder than ever. They chose a piece that blended Madison's gentle tone with Harmony's brightness and Lyra's delicate depth. Jackson helped them transpose it on the guitar, adding a rhythm that built gradually beneath the melodies, creating a sense of quiet storm beneath the harmonies. Most nights, they practiced in the garage. The acoustics were oddly perfect among the old instruments and oil cans. Harmony called it the echo chamber. Madison started keeping a small journal, writing down lyrics and melodic fragments. She wasn't sharing them yet, but Jackson noticed she kept them close, tucked into her jacket pocket, like a secret, not ready to give them away. Everything seemed to be going well, until it wasn't. The day before the deadline, a letter arrived from the principal's office. It was addressed directly to Jackson and printed on thick official paper. He read it once, then again, and felt something cold inside. "Dear Mr. Rivers, after reviewing last week's talent show performance and receiving multiple parent concerns, the school board has determined that unregistered students are not eligible to perform in district events. Therefore, your daughter Madison and the students Harmony and Lyra Carpenter, who are part of the trio movement, do not meet the submission criteria. We understand the disappointment this may cause and encourage all eligible students to instead present individual performances. Sincerely, Brenda M. Ellsworth, Youth Arts Participation Director." Jackson held the letter in his hand for a long time. He didn't tell the girls right away. He couldn't. That night after he went to bed, he called Catherine. She knew. he said quietly. Whoever Brenda is, she knew exactly what she was doing, and someone gave it to her. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, Jackson. I had no idea this was going to happen. I knew, he said painfully. This is my problem. I've seen how quickly people change their tone when something real starts to shine. You're not going to let this stop them, are you? He looked at the recorder hanging by the fireplace. No, but I need to be smart about how I fight this. The next day, he sat the girls down and read the letter. Madison didn't cry. Harmony did, silently. Lyra folded her arms, her jaw tight. What happens now? Are we disappearing again? No, Jackson said. We're still recording. If they throw it away, that's their choice, but they'll hear it. He turned to Madison. And if you want to write something new, something that tells them what you want them to hear, now is the time. Madison stood up, walked to her room, and brought back her notebook. She placed it on the table. The title on the first page read, Song for the Silent. The melody was slow at first, hesitant, like someone walking barefoot on ice. Then, note by note, it gained strength. Jackson sat on the floor next to Madison in the living room, his guitar in his lap, watching her finger trace each word in her notebook before turning them into sound. Harmony and Lyra were curled up in their chairs, listening. This wasn't just music, this was a testimony. By midweek, the cabin had transformed into something else. The kitchen became a vocal warm-up area, and the hallway was set up as a rehearsal space. The garage was made acoustic with blankets hung on the walls. Jackson set up his old condenser microphone, purchased years ago for concerts that would never come, and connected it to his old laptop. While the girls rehearsed their harmonies, Madison sat cross-legged on the floor, refining every word. They were building a cathedral of sound, and it was working. Until the piano broke. It was the night before the final shoot. Madison was playing the intro to Song for the Silent, her fingers now confident on the keys, her voice blending perfectly with Jackson's slow strumming on the guitar. Then a sharp crack. The middle C key was stuck. She hit it again, but the note came out dead. Jackson rushed over, opened the lid. Inside, a broken flange. He muttered. Madison's hands trembled. I can't play without it. Jackson knelt down slowly. Yes, you can. You've done it with the guitar before. No, she said, the word barely above a whisper. Not for this song. Jackson looked into her eyes and saw the tight coil of fear and pride. The piano wasn't just an instrument. It was a sanctuary. It gave her a place to hide while she found the courage to sing. He shook his head slowly. I'll fix it. He worked on it all night. By the light of a lantern, with tweezers, glue, and prayers, Jackson dismantled the damaged mechanism and reattached the broken flange. It took hours. His fingers ached, his eyes grew blurry, but he didn't stop. Not because he thought he could save the instrument, but because he knew he had to try. At dawn, he pressed the middle C. It wasn't perfect, but it was the right song. When the girls woke up, the sun was casting golden hair across the snow. Madison sat down at the piano, touched the keys, held her breath. It responded, just as she remembered. She looked at her father. No smile, no words, but another small nod of the head, a deep understanding that lived beyond language. Jackson stepped back, letting the three girls find their positions. Madison started the intro. Harmony and Lyra exchanged a glance, then to the girl in the back row who won't raise her hand, to the boy in the hallway, silence like sand. The harmonies were tighter than ever, layered, delicate. Then Madison joined the choir. We were made for music. Even if we never make a sound, we were made for more than just singing. We were made to be found. The guitar began warm and supportive, letting their voices glide over the chords like light on water. At the end of the last note, no one spoke. Jackson pressed stop on the recorder, his heart pounding. He didn't say it out loud, but he knew it was the take. He uploaded the file to a special link and filled out the application form himself. He paused when asked for the group name, then wrote, "The Silent Trio." When asked for a message to the judges, he wrote, "We know we don't meet your criteria, but we hope we meet your hearts. If there is a place for 3 girls who learn to sing in the cracks of the world, then maybe this song is for you too." He hovered over the send button for a moment, then clicked and let it go. The rejection came quickly, the next afternoon. Not from the jury, but from a parent. Jackson heard it while rummaging through the apple box at the grocery store. It must be easy to use pity to get on stage these days. He turned around. It was Darryl Crane, the father of a girl from Madison's old class, a banker, a deacon, the kind of man who smiled with his mouth but not with his eyes. "Forgive me," Jackson said calmly, but firmly. Darryl shrugged. "I'm just saying, a lot of people think it's manipulative to put those poor twins and your situation on display. Some people work hard to earn the spotlight." Jackson clenched his jaw. They worked hard, and they earned every second of the spotlight. Darryl stepped closer. "Well, don't expect everyone to applaud just because you brought a sad story along with the melody." Jackson didn't respond. He didn't need to, because some songs weren't for men like him. They were for girls still learning to sing and the fathers who refused to silence them. The snow was starting to soak into their boots, but the air was still sharp enough to bite at their throats. March was the kind of month Nebraska never fully embraced, neither winter nor spring, just a long gray pause in between. It was warm in the cabin, but only because of Jackson's burning fire and the strange momentum that had taken hold of the household. Even after Red left, the song lingered in the air like cigarette smoke, clinging to their clothes. Madison played every day now, not practicing, just living it. She hummed while the twins brushed their teeth, fed the birds, stirred the soup. Even Jackson caught himself whispering the chorus while chopping wood. The town might have rejected them, but something deeper had taken root. Catherine stopped again on Friday, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. Her cheeks were pink from the wind, and her smile was hesitant, but kind. "I found something I thought might be yours," she said, placing the package on the kitchen counter. Jackson raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Catherine opened it carefully. Inside was a vintage capo, its edges smooth with wear, and a tuning chart written in his wife's handwriting. The ink was smudged in places, but the title was still legible, "A Day for Madison." He looked at it. It was the song they had never finished, a lullaby Jackson had written on the nights Madison was colicky, and he played the guitar in the hallway to lull her to sleep. "I thought you lost it in the fire," he murmured. "It was in the school music cabinet," Catherine said quietly. "I found it in an old box." Madison walked into the room just then, her eyes curious. Jackson handed her the paper. She traced the letters with her finger, then looked up. "Can we play it?" He winked. "Do you want to finish it?" Madison shook her head. "It already feels finished. I just want to hear it." The next 2 hours were spent in the living room. Jackson sitting cross-legged on the floor with bare feet, the girls leaning against pillows and sofa cushions as he pieced together the chord progression. It began softly, like a heartbeat, 2 chords alternating, then a rise, then a slow descent. Madison sang the first line. Harmony, and Lyra joined in on the second verse. By the time they reached the bridge, Jackson's hands moved as if they had never stopped playing. His fingers remembered something his soul had been trying to forget for a long time. Catherine stood in the doorway, watching Ellis with a hand over her mouth. She wasn't crying, but she listened as if she were hearing music for the first time in years. The next morning, Jackson woke up before the sun rose and walked to the old cabin where he kept his performance equipment, the remnants of his life before grief turned him into a carpenter with calloused hands and unfinished songs. He carefully, respectfully opened the guitar case. The Taylor still shone beneath a layer of dust, the open mahogany body, the nickel frets, the strings long dull but still taut with memory. He sat down at the workbench, next to the cabin window, and began to restring it. One string at a time, tightening, tuning slowly. The oil lubricated the frets, polished the body, even glued a small crack near the unnoticed bass. When he finished, he ran his hand along the curve of the instrument and whispered, "Let's get it right this time." That afternoon, he called the girls into the living room. He placed the freshly tuned guitar on the stand, where it gleamed behind the fireplace, casting long shadows. "This," he said, "is the first guitar I ever owned. Your mother gave it to me when we got engaged." Madison stepped forward, her eyes wide. "It was the first thing that made me believe I could do something good with music," he continued. "I think it's time to bring it back." Harmony whispered, "Is this for the next performance?" Jackson hesitated. "No." Litra furrowed her brows. "Then what for?" He looked at all three of them. "For us. No stage, no judges, just a recording. A full session of all the songs you've been working on. Madison's originals, your harmonies, even that lullaby we finished. We'll release it online for free. No label, no gatekeepers." He paused. "And if the world hears it, good. But if there's just one child out there who hears it and realizes their voice matters, that's enough." Madison nodded slowly. "That's more than enough." They started that weekend. The garage became their studio. Jackson hung blankets along the walls, borrowed the neighbor's mixing board, and set up old TV lights on the roof. They recorded everything, the false starts, the laughter, the midnight harmonies, sung over cups of hot cocoa. The last song was a lullaby. Madison's mother's endless song, now carried by her daughter's voice, held steady by the guitar that had once rocked her to sleep. When it ended, no one spoke. Harmony clicked stop on the recorder. Lyra rested her head on Madison's shoulder. Jackson looked at the guitar in his lap, then at Catherine, who sat silently, offering tea and cookies and long, meaningful glances. "Welcome," he whispered. He didn't say who he was addressing. The girls, the music, his wife, himself, maybe all of them. That night, after everyone had fallen asleep, Jackson uploaded the album to a free streaming site under the title The Silent Trio. In the description he wrote only this: "For those who were told they were too quiet, for those waiting to be heard, here we are." The first comment appeared by sunrise, then the second, then a school nurse from Ohio, a father from Vermont, and a girl from Oregon who had put the lullaby on repeat while drawing sent messages. The world was listening, and the guitar was finally home.